Hello, people of the internet, and welcome to Mobcast, where we decipher the real lives of former mafia affiliates. My name is Andrew Moran.
I'm Olivia Brem.
I'm Ethan Barrisaw.
In today's episode, we are going to deep dive into three former mafia affiliates: Orlando Spado, who is nicknamed Ori Spado, which is also nicknamed the Hollywood Mob Boss.
Johnny Elite, who is also known as the Calculator.
And Bill Catullo Jr., who was from the Colombo crime family from New York.
We're so excited to deep dive into these three former mafia affiliates. We're going to start out with Olivia.
So, Johnny Elite was born in 1962 in Queens, New York. He was largely known as an enforcer for the Gambino crime family. He was really good friends with John A. Gotti, who was the son of infamous mob boss John Gotti. He was involved in lots of violent crime, extortion, and drug trafficking. He ended up admitting to extorting money from business owners in New York and New Jersey. In one of his cases, he used threats and violence to force a business owner to pay protection money to the mob. In 2008, this was a large turning point for Johnny Elite. He was arrested and sent back to the United States from Brazil. He's now seen as an active online podcast guest, motivational speaker, and author. Since his release, he's clearly trying to rebrand himself, give himself a new image.
So, do you think this rebrand is more of a representation of who he is today, or do you think it's more for the publicity side of it?
That's a really good question. I'm going to show you a clip here first, and then we can dive into that answer together.
I grew up in Woodhaven, Queens, Jamaica Avenue. It was on the border of East New York, Brooklyn. They nicknamed my neighborhood Death Haven because of all the violence, murders, people ODing, drugs. So it was a known neighborhood. We had an area called the Dome. It was up in the park. It was something you would see out of kind of the movies. I mean, to us, it was normal because we're young kids growing up in that area. But as I'm growing up and I'm going in that area, you can basically go up to the Dome and it was like a five and dime store of drugs, weapons, and anything that you wanted to, buy, they had it up there. So, locally to Jamaica Avenue was Kennedy Airport. So that was used as a hub for all of us to hijack trucks, give me up trucks. And all that swag would end up in our neighborhood, sometimes sold in bulk and then other times sold to individuals who will take it up into the Dome and we buy it up there or sell it up there. And eventually, as I got older, it become me selling it up there and putting guys up. When I hurt somebody, a lot of times I did it purposely where crowds would see and they'd understand this face, remember it. That's my wallet. This is the way I'm going to make money. This is the way I'm going to control this neighborhood. This is the way I'm going to control the drug trade and any other thing I want to control. So when somebody did something or disrespected me, my organization, my guys, I was very violent. I would be swift about it. I walk into a nightclub and example, I walked into a nightclub called Kickers on Metropolitan Avenue back in the 80s. And we warned the bouncers that from now on, you guys are going to be unionized. There is no more going to work without going through us. If you go to work on Friday, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get shot. And I guess, on their behalf, people talk, so they didn't take it serious, I guess. They don't understand the mob world. They didn't understand me. They didn't know me the way I know me, obviously. And they didn't think they just thought I was just another gangster, I guess, talking and giving an order. And they believed that their guy would protect them. And I warned the guy, when I shoot you, when I hurt you, if you come to work, it doesn't matter what your guy says. You're already shot, you're already hurt, you're already killed. Don't go to work. So I get a phone call and I'm home sleeping and I hear they're all at work. It's Friday night, the music's pumping, everybody's drinking. And I call my buddy and I said to him, come pick me up. He said, what are you going to do? I said, don't worry, just come pick me up. He picks me up. It's midnight, about that. We get in the car. I load up a couple of guns. I got 2 guns. I used to like to take a revolver always. I didn't like automatics because an automatic jammed on me once before. So I always had that belief that the automatic, there could be a problem. Make sure you carry 2 guns. I actually carried 3 I would carry an automatic, so I had the extra shots. I'd carry a revolver, and I would carry a 2-shot Derringer in a jock strap in case I run out of anything. I have something left that people don't know I have on me. And we get in the car, we pull up. I tell them to circle the block. There's a gas station around the corner from Kickers. And the club changed names several times. They had a couple different names, but the same owners and the people. And they were around gangsters also. They were mobsters. I pull up. I tell him, just stay in the parking lot. And he's a big guy, tough guy, Irish guy. And he says to me, no, I'm going to come with you. I said, I don't need you. So when we pull up to the bar, one of the head managers is there. And as soon as I see him, I says, come here. And he goes, John, he's trying to talk. And my guy, without asking me, went to swing at him. But when he went to swing at him, I already shot him in the stomach. And so he looks at me with like a half smile. He goes, oh, I thought I had him with a right hand.
So, Andrew, to answer your question, and after watching this video, I feel like you can see that as he shares his background and discusses his time being a hitman, he did endure a pretty violent childhood. I found it really interesting how he seems to blame a lot of his actions on the environment that he grew up in. It showed me a mix of like reflection and justification. Even when he admits to his violence, he talks so calmly and confidently, which doesn't make me think there's a lot of remorse here because he does seem to act almost proud. It made it kind of difficult to tell where his stance is now. While I do think it's important that he shows a more vulnerable and emotional side to him, as well as sharing these touching childhood stories, I don't know if I would say this is his smartest rebrand because he's pretty much showing people that he's a better man now and he's in a good spot and disregards a lot of the violence that he caused a lot of people. I'm now going to show you guys Johnny Elite's TikTok page, which has over 500,000 followers. As you watch these videos, keep in mind that he uses hashtags such as Mafia, Reformed, John Elite, Street Life, Real Talk. Clearly, he's a very proud Albanian and does not seem to feel like he did his country or anyone involved any injustices.
When I was in a restaurant with him one day, there was a bunch of guys, big, burly. Their arms were like this big, their shoulders were this big. I'm going, John, these guys don't like us. And these guys are looking at us like this the whole time. They're eating. And there's 20 of them, and they call for backup, too.
So, when I went into the restaurant, the way we are, we're stubborn. They're looking, and I'm like, fuck them. If they come over, I guess that we're going to have a problem. And they called more guys and more guys. I go, don't worry about it. There's only 20 of them.
That's enough about Johnny Elite right now. I'm going to hand the floor over to Andrew so we can learn a little bit more about Ori Spado.
Okay, so Ori Spado. So Ori Spado was a very important figure in the Hollywood Mafia. To go into a little bit of detail of who he is, they nicknamed him Ori. His real name is Orlando. He was born in 1944 in Rome, New York. He used to be in the U.S. military, but got into the insurance business. So he was in the insurance business for a while. He was actually doing very well in that business. He actually started his own agency called the Ori Agency, and he started making several $1 million a year, but actually ended up committing insurance fraud, and he will go into a little bit detail about that in the next clip, but he ended up getting found out, and yeah, he'll explain it in the next clip.
Frank Russo and my banker in my office, I needed $350,000, something like that. I already owed the bank maybe close to $1 million, and it was a small bank, and that was the maximum loans they could make. So I looked at Frank. I said, what's the worst could happen? He said, you're looking at 50 years in jail.
Okay, so something to mention is that Ori Spado was actually not a made man. This basically means that he was not technically affiliated with the Mafia. So he was not technically inducted into the Mafia. So he never actually considered himself affiliated with the Mafia in a technical stance. So that's something to mention. So he was notable for his association with the Colombo crime family, which was the crime family in New York City, and he had a lot of ties to Hollywood elites, and he actually ended up serving time in federal prison. He was known for being the mob fixer in Hollywood. The mob fixer is someone who smoothed over problems, who collected debts, and enforced mafia interests in the entertainment world. Something that was unique about him is that he did all of this in a non-violent way. So that was very interesting, and it was very unknown at this time to do things like this in a very non-violent way, but he was not a violent person. His associates included Sonny Francese, who we'll get into later, and Jimmy Kachi, who was also a high-ranking member of the Los Angeles crime family. So his reputation in Hollywood, he was known for being the Hollywood mob boss. That was his nickname while he was living in Hollywood. He worked with celebrities, agents, and executives in the entertainment business, and he developed a reputation for being discreet, effective, and loyal. He was arrested in 2008, and it was for conspiracy to commit racketeering, and he was also tied to extortion, illegal gambling, and other traditional mafia crimes. So his indictment was actually part of a larger case. It was part of the case to get the Colombo family. So he was kind of just collateral damage in that whole situation. And he actually ended up pleading guilty in 2011 and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. He actually only ended up serving 8, though. In 2019, so this was after prison, he published a book called The Accidental Gangster: From Insurance Salesman to Hollywood Fixer. So this whole book chronicles his life in organized crime. It offers a behind-the-scenes look at the mafia influence in Hollywood and blends stories with personal reflection. So basically what the book does, it shows his personal reflection on what he went through when he was involved in organized crime. The main thing in this book, though, is to kind of advocate for young people who are leaning towards that life of organized crime, and he is basically saying, do not do it. Do not make the same mistakes that I did. Do not join organized crime. So he's very against it now. He also talks about prison reform, redemption, and obviously his own journey. So he appears on podcasts and interviews and all that stuff. I think it's also important to look at the perspectives of other people on Ori Spotto. So I want to mention Michael Francese, who was the son of Sonny Francese. So he had a lot of tension with Ori, and Ori even claimed that Sonny tried to make a hit on him. And then Michael made some other really, really crazy claims on Ori against, his father. So let's take a look at that right now.
Do you know about this?
Put a hit out on Ori?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that to be a fact, but Ori's a bad guy. I mean, Ori used my father's name, used my name, threatened people as a result of that. He was doing some illicit things with my brother. I think he was feeding my brother drugs. I think when my brother finally straightened out a little bit when he was living with me out here, in the early 2000s, I think Ori put him back on drugs. I don't like Ori Spotto, and he won't come near me, regardless of what he might have said in that interview. I'm not aware of the interview, so I don't know if he said anything about anything, but he's a liar. I wouldn't believe anything that he says.
Andrew, would you say Ori's rebrand is genuine, or do you think he has some ulterior motives for this rebrand?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I think that it can go both ways. I think that he does show redemption in a way that he is trying to help young people not make the same mistakes that he did. He's not trying to make excuses for his past mistakes. He's not trying to rewrite history, but he is acknowledging that he did make those mistakes, and he is acknowledging that they were mistakes that he shouldn't have done. He's not talking about himself. He's more like trying to advocate for young people not making those mistakes. But then there's the other side. There was a clip that I'm going to insert in a minute where he's almost bragging about being so high up in the mafia chain. So I'm going to play that right now.
So for you wannabe gangsters who want to call me a rat, you don't bother me at all. But you see, you're a wannabe. I was the real deal. There's a big difference, folks.
Enough about Ori Spotto. Let's move on to Ethan.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to tell you guys now about Bill Catullo and his life in the mafia and his life after the mafia. So let's talk about Bill Catullo Jr. now. So he was the son of famous mobster William Catullo, who was the underboss of the Colombo crime family from New York. So growing up, he had a pretty normal childhood. He enjoyed playing sports, hanging out with his friends, all things normal childhood. But by the age of 12, 13, all he knew was mob rules. So he always was part of the mafia and like mob scene just because his dad was very big in it, and that was just his lifestyle. That was how he was raised. But he never really knew about what his dad actually did for work. Like he didn't know that his dad was the underboss until one day this kid who he always fought with at school tells him, we're lucky. We never have to work in our life. And that kind of got Bill questioning, like, what does he mean by this? Because his dad always instilled in him that he had to work hard and all those things. So that got him to ask his dad about what he actually does. So just like a lot of kids, Bill really loved hanging out with his dad and looked up to his dad. And that kind of was a main reason why he wanted to join the mafia and follow his father's footsteps. But now let's hear from Bill himself about what actually drew him to this lifestyle and following his father's steps.
Wasn't the appeal of that life. It was the appeal of knowing that I can be with my dad every day. If my dad would have been a plumber, I would have wanted to fix pipes. If he would have been a butcher, I would have wanted to cut meat up. My dad just happened to be a gangster. So yeah, you do see the nice cars. You do see the big houses. You do see the respect. You do see being able to walk into a restaurant and it be packed. But hey, oh, your table's over here, Junior. Those things, yeah, they're appealing. When I was younger, women would just gravitate to you because they knew you were involved in that life and that they wanted to be a part of it.
So as we just heard from Bill, he really looked up to his father. He loved spending time with him, and he really just always wanted to be with him. So when his father died on May 26, 1999, when they thought he disappeared, he had a lot of distaste in his mouth. He went out looking for revenge, but he wasn't able to do it because he didn't know who pulled the trigger, and that was the person he had distaste for. And he also wanted to break the violent cycle, as he knew if he went out and seek revenge like he could have, there'd be no turning back. He'd be stuck in this life forever. So instead, he helped and cooperated with the police and the FBI to help find his dad and find his father's body. Um, this is a question because it's breaking the code of Omerta. So that kind of ended his time in the mafia because once he did this, there was no turning back. He had to stay with this course because otherwise he could be in danger. So let's hear from Bill now about what his father would think about this and what he thinks about it.
He probably didn't like what I did. But the other side, the humanitarian side, maybe he says, "Hey, Willie, thank you for finding me." But I don't think that he would have been okay. Let's put it this way: if he was alive and I went to jail, I take my lumps. There is no cooperation. So I know how he felt about rats. So I can't look at you guys with a straight face and say that he's okay with that.
So after cooperating with the police and the FBI, he went into witness protection program. And even though this means his time as part of a mafia family was over, he was happy with this because he realized once he had his first child that he needed to get out, that he didn't want this for his son, and that this wasn't a good way to live. Also, when he had his first son, he learned that whenever he was hurting someone, he was hurting someone else's son, and that pained him to know that that could be his son one day. So even though Bill's no longer part of the mafia crime family, he still has never held an actual job. He has his job title on LinkedIn as father, so he doesn't really have much for work. He has a bit of a social media presence, but he says he doesn't like social media. He's done some other projects, like he's considering writing a book. He and his family went on MTV, but it sounded like they just did that because they wanted the money. So he champions things like and supports causes and tries to help raise awareness to children, teach children that every life counts and to respect one another.
That's really interesting to hear about. So it looks like all three of our podfathers are really looking to rebrand themselves and give themselves a new image. I'm wondering if you think Bill's rebrand is authentic or inauthentic, kind of like the rest of ours.
Yeah, so I feel like it's a double-edged sword with Bill. So I think he genuinely regrets his time in the mafia and what he did. Like I said earlier, he did help out when his father went missing. He was willing to cooperate with the FBI and the police, but and he also really changed once his son was born. So I think since there's like a direct event that caused this change, I think his like in his heart, it's very genuine. But I also think part of his presence and like why he's trying to like become a podfather is because he no longer has the income coming from the mafia like he did when he was growing up and when he was still part of it. So I think part of his change also has to do with being able to bring in money. Like his family went onto a reality TV show that definitely had to be money based. No one really goes on reality TV to share their story. So yeah, I think he has become a better person than what he was while he was in the mafia, and he does regret his time, but I also think he's doing it for money.
I think that was all for this episode, unless anybody else has anything that they want to add.
No, just wanted to say thank you for your guys' time.
All
Yeah,
right, that was all.
hope you
Thank you
guys
guys.
enjoyed hearing about our podfathers.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and hope you guys come back for the next episode.
Bye.